Will Syracuse Basketball get a big man in its 2025 recruiting class? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here in the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on this week's Poll Friday, I asked you guys the question, yes or no, will Syracuse Basketball get a big man in its 2025 recruiting class? There were about 240 of you guys that voted, and about 75% of you guys said yes, Syracuse Basketball will get a big man in its 2025 recruiting class. Now, it is important to note that when I asked this question on Monday, it was before four-star big man Matthew Gilhool released his top remaining schools left for his services. And I was anticipating that Syracuse was going to make the cut. I didn't know exactly how many schools it was going to be. It ended up being 7. But I think at least most of us anticipated Syracuse was going to make a top 7 list for him, considering he had visited campus 3 times, 1 official, 2 unofficial. But it was shocking that Syracuse did not make the cut, even if they weren't necessarily the favorite to land Matthew Gilhool. So obviously, because Matthew Gilhool is no longer an option for Syracuse basketball in 2025, it is much, much less likely now that the Orange get a big man in its recruiting class. So my gut says no. I don't think that Syracuse is going to get a big man in its 2025 recruiting class. That means the Orange are going to have to go portal hunting for a big man next offseason because Eddie Lampkin's out of years of eligibility, Naheem McLeod's out of years of eligibility, and this is a good problem, but Donnie Freeman is likely out the door because he is a one-and-done caliber prospect. 9 of the last 10 number 6 overall recruits in the country have been one-and-done. And guess what? Donnie Freeman is the number 6 overall player in the class of 2024. So odds are he's going to be 1 year at Syracuse and then in the NBA draft. So you're not going to have Donnie, you're not going to have Eddie, and you're not going to have Naheem. That means Syracuse is going to have to go portal hunting if they do not get a big man in its 2025 recruiting class. Having said that, Syracuse does have 2 offers out there for big men in its 2025 class. The first one is Chris Cenac. He is 6'10", 230 pounds from New Orleans, Louisiana. He is a 5-star recruit. He is the number 6 overall player in the country on ESPN and on On3. Now, he hasn't visited campus yet, and that's mainly because he was only recently offered by Syracuse. But I would not say the Orange have no chance at Chris Cenac because he's only taken 2 unofficial visits so far. LSU and Houston. It was an article from about 20 days ago. I don't know if he's been on any more visits since then. But LSU and Houston are the only known ones that I can tell that have gotten an unofficial visit with Chris Cenac. He would obviously be the dream. He is the highest ranked player that Syracuse has offered in the class of 2025 that at least they still have a chance at getting. And hopefully the Orange can build a relationship and make him a priority target in the class of 2025, because then that would give him much more of a chance at getting a visit from him and hopefully getting him within the final few schools for him. Hopefully they can at least get into the conversation. I'm not saying they're out of it, but they're not necessarily in it either. They have to do a little bit more work in order to really get into the conversation for Chris Cenac. But the offer is still there, so there's certainly a chance that Syracuse can land Chris Cenac. Now, coming up, Syracuse has one more offer on the table for a big man in 2025. It's one thing to watch baseball on TV. That at times can get boring, but going to a game in person is an awesome experience, and I'm looking forward to watching the Mets this summer now that they're actually in the playoff conversation, and the way I'm going to be watching the Mets is through Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. All you have to do is go to Gametime Gametime and search the team you want to see if you're choosing. It can be MLB or any league for that matter, and ticket options will appear right away. My favorite part is the all-in pricing feature. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on this week's Poll Friday, I asked you guys the question, yes or no, will Syracuse basketball get a big man in its 2025 recruiting class? I went over how that question was asked before Matthew Gilhool announced his top 7. I thought Syracuse was going to make it. They did not. So now their odds of getting a big man are much lower than what I thought it was going to be just a few days ago. But still, 75% of you guys said yes, that Syracuse will get a big man in its 2025 recruiting class. We went over Chris Cenac. He's the highest ranked player that Syracuse basketball still has a chance at for 2025. He's 6'10" from New Orleans, Louisiana. Not exactly a Syracuse basketball hotbed for recruiting, but still the Orange, if they get a big man, hopefully they can make him a priority, and hopefully they can get Chris Cenac, right? The other player that Syracuse has offered is Asher Elson. He is 6'10", 180 pounds from Brooklyn, New York. So that's more of a Syracuse basketball recruiting hotspot right there. He is a 24/7 Sports composite 4-star recruit. He was offered by the Orange in April. He does not have a visit to campus to my knowledge, but being from the New York area, I would say that Syracuse certainly has a decent enough chance if they can at least make him a priority for them. I think it really ultimately comes down to, because Chris Cenac is the better recruit. He is the better recruit, even though Asher Elson is a fast rising player. How much resources do you want to spend on each of those players? How much time and commitment do you want to spend on getting Chris Cenac or Asher Elson? For example, you can, because Chris Cenac is a higher ranked prospect, you can spend a boatload of resources on him, a lot of time, a lot of energy to go and try to recruit him. But because he's so highly touted, so many other schools are going to be involved for his services. So you might not get him. The odds are still low, even if you spend all that time to get him, right? With Asher Elson, it could be one of those recruits where if you spend a lot of time and a lot of resources, you could basically put yourselves in a position where it's a lock to get him. But the problem is that if you're going too hard after Chris Cenac, you might then fall behind on Asher Elson. So it's a little bit of a juggling match between the two recruits, because Chris Cenac is so highly touted, and Asher Elson, while he is a 4-star recruit, I wouldn't exactly call him a plug-and-play starting center for 2025-26 like Chris Cenac. So it's going to be a balancing act for Syracuse basketball. If they want to land a big man, how much resources they spend on getting a Chris Cenac versus an Asher Elson. If they believe that they have a legitimate chance at Cenac, then I say you go all in for him. If you don't, then I would invest more time and energy on Asher Elson. That's the way I would approach it, because you got to get it. I think, even though I'm saying no, that I don't think they're going to get a big man, I think it should be a priority to get one, because you don't want to have to recruit 2 players or 2 big men out of the transfer portal next offseason. It's much easier to just do one, right? Syracuse got 1 in Eddie Lampkin last year. You can get 1, but getting 2, that can be tricky. So hopefully they can land at least one of them. And if you land Cenac, all you need is a backup center in the portal. If you land Elson, then you need a starting center in the portal. But at very minimum, Elson could be a backup in 2025-26. I'm leaning no right now. I don't think Syracuse basketball is going to land a big man, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. It's a juggling act between Chris Cenac and Asher Elson, and who knows? Maybe they'll send out another offer here or there to another big man, but I don't know. But it's right now between Chris Cenac and Asher Elson. So having said that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And a reminder, for Poll Fridays, I pose the question every Monday afternoon on Twitter and on YouTube. The Twitter is in the description below. It's at @LO_Syracuse. That's where I pose the question, so you guys can vote right there. So tune in next week for Poll Friday.